Back in early January, a cryptic message in the vein of the one sent to Keanu Reeves' Thomas Anderson in the early moments of The Matrix appeared on Will Smith's Instagram page. The message recounted an infamous bit of Hollywood lore, the fact that Smith had been offered the film's iconic role of Neo before turning it down in order to star in Wild Wild West, the first and arguably biggest critical failure of his career. After stating this bit of ancient history, the message concluded with an ominous statement: "Wake up, Will. The Matrix has you." For the better part of a month, Smith's fans waited with bated breath, wondering what the blockbuster star could possibly have in store for them. Perhaps a sit-down interview with the directors of The Matrix, the reclusive Wachowskis, where they discuss the process of making the film and how Smith could have fit into it. Potentially an announcement for a Matrix sequel, finally starring Smith, that would wash the taste out of our mouths left behind by Lana Wachowski's wretched soft reboot of the series, The Matrix Resurrections. Or maybe some third thing. But alas, as January came to a close, Smith followed up the strange message with another one, a series of behind-the-scenes set photos of himself standing on iconic Matrix sets, as well as a mysterious link, willsmith.com/whiterabbit. Fans the world over hurriedly punched the link into their web browsers, only to let out a collective sigh of disappointment at the realization that the cryptic messages had simply been viral marketing for a brand new single from Smith and Big Sean, cloyingly called Beautiful Scars. Ugh. A lame music video where Smith and Sean spit subpar bars while reenacting famous scenes from the Wachowskis' best film. For his part, Big Sean does his usual boilerplate rap business, performing unremarkable rhymes that refuse to stick in anyone's heads, while Smith raps about his own iconic status while simultaneously excusing and begging forgiveness for that one time he slapped the shit out of Chris Rock at the Oscars, something we've all been tired of hearing about and have basically moved on from. In short, it was a massive letdown. Yet another frustrating, if minor, turn of events in Will Smith's storied career, a career that has diminished significantly since its peak in the mid-2000s. Though it may come as a surprise to anyone under the age of 30, there was a point in time when Will Smith was the most famous blockbuster star in the world. Beginning his career as one half of the corny yet endearing Philadelphia-based rap duo DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Smith racked up several hit songs including the likes of Girls Ain't Nothing But Trouble, A Nightmare on My Street, and the duo's biggest hit, Parents Just Don't Understand, before parlaying his success into an acting career. At the hands of legendary music and television producer Quincy Jones, who paired Smith's outgoing rap persona with a classic fish-out-of-water premise, Smith starred in the groundbreaking comedy The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which was not only one of the defining sitcoms of all time, but a proving ground that allowed Smith to stretch and grow as both a comedic and dramatic actor.
How come you don't want me, man?
During the show's 6-season run on NBC, Smith broke out on the big screen by teaming up with the other major sitcom star of the era, Martin Lawrence, starring in the feature debut of action maestro Michael Bay, Bad Boys. While Smith had appeared in films prior to Bay's action classic, like his debut in independent drama Where the Day Takes You, the Whoopi Goldberg Ted Danson comedy Made in America, and the Oscar bait drama 6 Degrees of Separation, which brought him considerable critical attention for his supporting role as a gay con artist posing as the son of Sidney Poitier, it was undoubtedly his teaming with Lawrence that shot him straight to mainstream cinematic success. Even though Bad Boys didn't set the world on fire critically, it made a dent both culturally and financially, earning $141.4 million worldwide and spawning 3 sequels to date. Smith would follow up Bad Boys with 2 more career-defining hits, Roland Emmerich's sci-fi disaster movie Independence Day, and the Barry Sonnenfeld-directed, Steven Spielberg-produced sci-fi action comedy Men in Black, the former earning a whopping $817.4 million worldwide in 1995, and the latter earning $589.3 million in 1997. Men in Black would also garner Smith a Grammy for Best Rap Solo Performance thanks to a song of the same name on the film's soundtrack. Yes, Gen Z, we all thought Will Smith dancing with a CGI alien was cool. Throughout the 90s and 2000s, Smith would forge an unprecedented blockbuster run while juggling a nearly as impressive music career, becoming the first actor in history to have 8 consecutive films gross over $100 million at the box office, cementing the rapper turned actor as not only a major box office draw, but a tried and true American icon, one who can now be found shilling for shoddy, poorly reviewed mobile zombie games. While that last shot is admittedly a bit reductive, after all, it's inarguable that Will Smith has maintained a certain level of superstardom since he broke out, it's also inarguable that his career has been suffering for quite some time. The actor once known as the king of the 4th of July weekend is now better known as the father of pop and rap stars Willow and Jaden Smith, as the face of the Crying Will meme, second only to the crying Jordan, and for a social media presence that feels like a dad who just learned how the VFX app on his iPhone works. Many will point to the aforementioned Oscars slap as the moment where Smith's career took a turn. While it's undoubtedly true that embarrassing himself on the biggest stage in Hollywood didn't help, the slap is merely a symptom of the dual ills that have plagued Smith's career slowly over time, the first of which being his own excessive candor in regards to his personal life. Taking inspiration from fellow social media savvy superstar The Rock, Will Smith has been an avid presence online for some time now. While many celebrities, including The Rock, will use social media for cheap marketing, posting trailers for upcoming film projects, plugging various brand deals, or pushing their own liquor brands, because let's face it, booze is where the real money's at, Smith has fully embraced the concept. Teaming up with local creators on press tours to produce original content, posting behind-the-scenes videos, and even producing full-blown documentaries about his personal life. Between his YouTube channel, Instagram, and his wife's Facebook Live show, The Red Table Talks, Smith has granted his fans unprecedented access into his personal matters in an attempt to relate to the average Joe. Unfortunately, these peeks into his personal life have only managed to do the opposite. About 3 years ago, Smith released a YouTube original 7-part documentary called Best Shape of My Life, where he revealed his dad bod for all the world to see, pledging that it was only the first step in a journey to get back in shape. It's of course admirable that Smith was willing to be honest about what had become of his dark seeker-slaying physique, but what played out over the course of the documentary was less so, with each installment basically painting a portrait of a pampered celebrity unable to put in the work to get in shape, despite having all of the best resources in the world and a full-blown team at his disposal. Throughout, we watch as Smith berates his employees for minor mistakes.
You are killing me. You don't bring a film crew and everything, Jazz, if you don't have everything set up.
Completely blow off gym sessions, wasting his trainer's time simply because he didn't feel like showing up.
Will didn't show up this morning. We're here making the best of it, shooting some B-roll stuff.
And ultimately quitting the whole endeavor, behaving as if it were his team that failed.
We blew it. We missed it. It's over, and we got to stop, and I'm ready to stop.
Before using the rest of the project to reframe his failure as if it were a success. Rather than seeming relatable, Smith exposes himself as what he is, the CEO of his own brand, surrounded by yes men who refuse to hold him accountable. In the documentary, we also get glimpses into the writing of Smith's now infamous autobiography, where he recounts his various parental struggles. In one of these glimpses, he recalls a story concerning his daughter Willow and her Billboard charting single Whip My Hair. Hoping to fulfill Willow's pop star dreams, Will used his clout to stage a concert tour for her, making deals with promoters, venues, and various brands to help his daughter connect with her fans. Only, after a handful of performances, Willow arbitrarily decided that she simply didn't feel like performing anymore, which, to be fair, an 11-year-old is wont to do. So maybe don't stage a massive tour around her. After her father initially insisted she finish what she started, Willow took it upon herself to shave her own head in the middle of the night so she wouldn't have to keep going. For you see, it would be difficult for her to whip her hair if she had no hair to whip. In response, rather than slapping a wig on the child and forcing her to learn the importance of fulfilling her obligations that concern other people's money, including her fans, Smith explained how he allowed her to quit, framing the moment as one where he learned compassion for his children rather than the moment he allowed his daughter to shirk her responsibilities. You asked Daddy for a world tour? Now do the world tour! And finish your Sunday!
Is that enough? 2 more bites.
These anecdotes, of course, pale in comparison to the infamous Red Table Talk where Will and his estranged wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, explain her alleged infidelity, also known as an entanglement.
An entanglement, an entanglement.
An entanglement with August. I got into an entanglement with August.
Over the course of their 12-minute conversation, Jada and a seemingly emotional Will detail the state of their open relationship in the most opaque terms possible, explaining that they were each exploring other relationships and taking a mutual break from monogamy. Rather than clearing issues up, the conversation only fueled online gossip, leading to a later admission from Smith in his memoir that, following Jada's 40th birthday, where he commissioned a documentary about her life and even got her favorite artist, Mary J. Blige, to perform for her in a desperate bid to get her to love him again, she instead threw a tantrum, leading to a fissure in their marriage. According to Smith's book, while they remain married, he and Jada haven't lived together since 2016. While TMZ-esque gossip isn't my usual forte, I only drudge up these tabloid issues to illustrate the fact that I shouldn't know this stuff about Will Smith's life. None of us should. Will Smith was once the coolest guy in the room, but now since we know every detail about him, he just comes off as an arrogant, out-of-shape sap who allows his kids to run him and his wife to him.
An entanglement.
With August.
I understand that they have a mutual agreement, which I support when it's between two consenting adults, but that's not the general perception of the public who boiled the whole moment down to the aforementioned crying Will meme. I also understand that while perception doesn't necessarily equate to reality, it's vital in career terms for a blockbuster celebrity. Of course, it's not just his candor that has contributed to Smith's diminished status. He's done plenty professionally to undermine his career as well, namely refusing to relinquish creative control for his film projects. It's by no means out of the ordinary for a star of Will Smith's caliber to function as a producer for his movies. Contemporaries like The Rock, Ryan Reynolds, and Vin Diesel are all people who tightly control their own brands, selecting directors they want to work with, co-writing their own films, and even micromanaging their own franchises to the point where blockbuster filmmakers give up millions of dollars by quitting in the middle of production in a desperate attempt to get away from them.
Is it fair to say that this will be the best one?
In my heart, yes.
So in theory, there's nothing inherently wrong with Smith being involved on the creative side of things beyond his capacity as an actor, but in practice, his need for excessive control has only served to undermine his career, leading him to almost exclusively take roles where he's the hero, allowing him to wedge his own spiritual philosophies into movies that don't need them. Why are we bringing Bad Boys for Life to a screeching halt in order to discuss Buddhist philosophy? Better yet, why are we making M. Night Shyamalan direct a $130 million allegory about how fear isn't real starring your Nepo baby son? But worst of all, it's actively steered Smith away from working with auteurist filmmakers. The Matrix wasn't the only high-profile film Will Smith passed on. The actor was also writer-director Quentin Tarantino's first choice to play Django in Django Unchained, but Smith passed on the project, telling Empire magazine, "I came really close. It was one of the most amazing screenplays I had ever seen. I was in the middle of Men in Black 3 and Tarantino was ready to go, and I just couldn't sit with him and get through the issues, so I didn't want to hold him up." Woohoo! Haha! If the rumors are to be believed, those quote-unquote issues Smith mentioned weren't actual issues at all, but a desire from the actor to basically rewrite the script entirely to better fit his image, i.e. toning down the violence, shifting the script's focus on revenge to themes of love, and most importantly, taking almost all of the focus off of Christoph Waltz's integral character, Dr. King Schultz, and putting it back on Django. While one could argue it would make sense to put more emphasis on the title character of the film rather than the supporting character, I doubt Smith's motivation for changing the script stemmed from a desire to improve it. It's more likely that he just wanted more screen time for himself. For his part, Tarantino would insist that he simply chose Jamie Foxx for the role because he was the right guy for the job, telling Total Film, "He was the cowboy. I met 6 guys, 6 magnificent actors, but he was the cowboy and I was looking for the cowboy." Okay, but years later, in a Hollywood Reporter roundtable discussion, Smith would insist that he passed, conveniently failing to mention the alleged petty reasons and insisting on the nobler thematic issue of love versus violence.
For me, I just couldn't connect to violence being the answer. Love had to be the answer.
That aged poorly. It would be idiotic to insist that Smith hasn't had success despite this need for creative control, but it would be equally idiotic to argue that it hasn't hamstrung his career in many ways. At his peak in the mid-2000s, the open-shirt foot-chasing, alien-arresting, happiness-pursuing superstar would never be forced to take a supporting role in an ensemble film in a doomed cinematic universe. But thanks to several underwhelming flops that he largely had control over, he's resorted to taking any role that comes to him in order to remain relevant, and that stems from his refusal to push the boundaries of his image and his dubious storytelling instincts his contemporary Tom Cruise has, instincts that he would be wise to learn from. There arguably aren't any blockbuster careers that parallel Will Smith's as closely as that of one Thomas Maypother Cruise. Rising to fame in the early 1980s off the back of bawdy teen comedies, beloved action blockbusters, and acclaimed Oscar dramas, Cruise quickly rose through the ranks of the Hollywood elite, eventually going into business for himself and producing his own films, including his very first production, Mission Impossible, which established an action franchise that endures to this day, each entry pushing the bounds of action cinema further than the last and ultimately giving us the greatest action film of all time, Mission Impossible Fallout. But, much like Smith, Cruise has grappled with similar issues in his personal life that have in turn affected his career. Following his high-profile divorce from acclaimed actress Nicole Kidman, the woman responsible for the strange feelings in my no-no parts when I watched Batman Forever as a kid, Cruise was the subject of mounting tabloid pressure. Throughout the early 2000s, he had to contend with rumors regarding his sexuality, his love life, and his status within the problematic and mysterious Church of Scientology. This rampant probing of the man's personal life eventually compounded, resulting in a couple of bizarre public appearances in 2005, including a contentious Today Show interview with Matt Lauer where the star repeatedly repeatedly misused the word glib to insult him.
Matt, you're glib.
While taking a controversial Scientology-influenced stance on prescription medication.
You don't even know what Ritalin is.
Followed by an even more infamous interview with Oprah Winfrey where he jumped on her couch to proclaim his love for his new girlfriend, Katie Holmes. A moment I think we all agree just felt like a man desperately attempting to disprove rumors that he was gay.
You can't catch me, gay thoughts!
Cruise's bizarre behavior had immediate consequences for his career, causing Paramount to terminate their long-standing production deal with Cruise and Paula Wagner's production company, and causing his next two films, Mission Impossible 3 and Oscar bait drama Lions for Lambs, to underperform. Unlike Smith, however, Cruise learned from these embarrassing mistakes. After the pair of disastrous interviews, the actor promptly fired his sister-turned-publicist Leanne Devitt and hired an actual publicity firm. Since this shift, Cruise has become something of a Hollywood recluse, rarely making public appearances, only doing press if he has a film to promote or an industry to save, and never publicly discussing his personal life or religious beliefs. As a rule, none of us should discuss religion publicly, especially if the religion in question is based on the inane science fiction prose of a nautical con artist. On the creative front, Cruise recovered with a quick pivot to comedy with a memorable turn as blowhard movie producer Les Grossman in Ben Stiller's infamous satire Tropic Thunder, before partnering with Oscar-winning writer and director Christopher McQuarrie, a man who, in one way or another, has had his hands on every film Cruise has produced since they met on the set of Valkyrie in 2008. With this strategy, Cruise has reached a level of success he hadn't seen prior to his initial fall. By working with a fellow artist who intuitively understands filmic narratives and structure, Cruise has released banger after banger, allowing his work to speak for itself and generating enough clout that he can literally bully movie studios into doing what he wants, including forcing Paramount to wait until the pandemic died down to release his long-awaited sequel, the $1.4 billion earning Top Gun Maverick, to theaters, a move that single-handedly saved theatrical distribution. This kind of massive comeback is possible for Will Smith as well, but only if he takes a page out of Cruise's book. While he hasn't been a complete slouch since that infamous night at the Oscars, mostly thanks to the success of the Adil El Arbi and Bilal Fallah directed Bad Boy sequels, a pair of flicks with a fun and inventive directorial style that does Michael Bay better than Michael Bay, and delivered a better apology for the slap than any of the other 12 Smith put out.
Cut the ass out, man.
This is not the time or place for an ill-advised pivot back to music, an arena where Smith's antiquated rhymes have no hope of penetrating the cultural zeitgeist. We all just watched a Pulitzer Prize winner in bell-bottom jeans simultaneously roast a pop star as well as a wannabe dictator while making a nuanced political statement alongside the legendary Samuel L. Jackson at the biggest sporting event in the country. No one wants to watch you pretend to be in the Matrix with Big Sean. If Will Smith is ever going to reach his full potential as an elder statesman and reclaim his spot as the king of the box office, he needs to stop trying to control the narrative and his career. Stop willingly sharing personal information with the public and start partnering with the best filmmakers, then allow them to do what they do. If The Rock, after a failed attempt to hijack the same cinematic universe Smith starred in, a couple of box office bombs, and a few unflattering high-profile exposés, can humble himself enough to take direction from acclaimed indie filmmaker Benny Safdie for the upcoming film The Smashing Machine, then Smith can go back to Tarantino, hat in hand, and ask if he's got anything. Like the John Shaft Frank Bullitt crossover movie I've desperately wanted him to write for years now. Tell me that wouldn't be awesome. Let me know what you think about the state of Will Smith's career down in the comments section below. Like me, do you think Smith needs to stop releasing music and focus on resuscitating his film career? Or have you been bumping Beautiful Scars since it dropped? Let me know. I'd also like to ask that if you liked this video, please click the like button, press subscribe, ring the bell, and share it with a friend. I'd like to say thanks in advance. Thanks for watching. And until next time, peace.